Jason lived among the city streets where the cobblestones remembered the steps of those who had long gone, and shadows lay heavily like memories. He was 38 and carried within himself not just the years, but the weight of injustice that had eaten into his heart like rust. He had no home, because it had long been taken by people stronger, not in spirit but on paper, and with stamps. He had no family because his wife, tired of poverty, left him. With only a shadow of memories of warmth that once lived nearby, he walked the city looking for work. But every time doors closed in his face as if some invisible force pushed him back and whispered, "You are needed by no one." He knew the world did not love those who could not stay on their feet and fell because where the weak fall others see only a spot on the pavement and pass by. Jason walked through streets where neon flickered above bar doors and advertising signs shouted about happiness, sold for money he did not have. He saw people in suits rushing home where warm lights and dinner awaited, while he faced only the night and an old coat that no longer protected against cold. And rain in his pocket remained a few small coins, and he knew they would only buy cheap coffee in a machine. But even that coffee sometimes saved him from feeling that he was dissolving among an indifferent city. He remembered his childhood when he dreamed of becoming an engineer and creating machines that would change people's lives. He studied late at night and drew plans. Now those dreams seemed to him like fragments scattered by the wind across the desert of his fate. Yet he could not get rid of the feeling that somewhere deep in his heart a spark still remained that had not gone out. Sometimes he caught himself thinking that in all this hopelessness, it was that little spark that kept him from falling into the abyss. One evening, he saw a homeless veteran sitting by the bridge, holding a cardboard sign asking for help. Jason sat next to him, and they were silent for a long time, for words were unnecessary. Each saw in the other's eyes their own pain. Then Jason shared the last piece of bread and heard a thank you that sounded louder than any speech. And at that moment he realized that even when you have nothing, you can give more than others expect. From that day, he began seeking those worse off than himself, and each such encounter opened a new side of him. He began to feel that life is not just about blows and losses, but about moments when you can lend a hand to another. A quiet confidence appeared in his heart, that even in the darkest darkness you can leave a trace of light. And though this path brought him no money and did not return the past, it gave him something more than the victories he had once hoped for. It gave him the feeling that he was still alive. Jason learned to live in constant motion because when he stopped, the silence around squeezed his chest and forced him to feel all the weight of loneliness. He walked the city, helping where he could, sometimes carrying packages for elderly people, sometimes finding lost dogs and taking them to shelters, sometimes simply listening to those who had no one to talk to. And each such day seemed to weave a thin thread into the fabric of his new life. Though this fabric was torn and full of holes, already there appeared colorful patterns. Yet the city did not change its face. It remained cruel to those who did not fit its rules. People looked through him as if he were transparent, and only occasionally a gaze lingered longer. Then Jason felt that he still existed and had not turned into a shadow one morning while standing in line for cheap soup for the homeless. He saw a guard roughly push a young man trying to get ahead. The boy fell and hurt his knee. And although there were many people around, only Jason stepped forward to help. He helped him up and they shared the portion of soup. The boy looked at him with gratitude in his eyes, and it echoed in Jason's very heart. These small encounters became his invisible treasure. He had no gold and no home, but he had these memories glowing with warmth in the darkest nights. He began to understand that life does not always give what you want, but it always gives a chance to become someone greater than you were yesterday. And though his path was difficult and unjust, a thin vein of meaning was already breaking through. Jason woke up early every morning because the city did not wait for him, and he could not wait either. He went out into foggy streets where the smell of rain and wet asphalt lingered. And in this foggy twilight, he saw people rushing to work, to school, to meetings. And among these hasty movements, he felt his own presence, for his help was quiet, but felt he knew that every day he could create a small miracle. even if it did not change the world on a city scale, but changed someone's day, and that is what matters. One day he saw a boy standing alone at an intersection, his mother lost in the crowd. Jason went up and held his hand until they found the mother. When the boy turned and looked at him with trusting eyes, Jason felt the same warmth he had felt long ago when he received help from the old veteran. That moment was a small victory over everything that had once overwhelmed him, for he understood that his small actions have meaning. In the evenings, he sometimes sat on the empty benches of parks observing life going on around him. He watched people rushing home, couples holding hands, children running and laughing, and he realized that his path was not like others, but he was still important. Even in his own loneliness, he felt like a thread connecting pieces of life into a single fabric where there is room for pain and hope. So days and weeks passed, and Jason felt that the little flame in his heart was growing and becoming warmer. He found his purpose not in money or success, but in the feeling that he could be a support for those weaker. He understood that fate had been unfair and cruel. But even in this injustice, he found little sparks that illuminated his path, and they were more valuable than any worldly wealth. Jason continued walking his path, and each day felt that his inner flame was stronger. He helped the homeless, brought warm tea to those freezing at stops, talked to elderly people so they would not feel forgotten. And though his own life remained difficult and unjust, he began to understand that strength is not in wealth or influence, but in the ability to give warmth to those nearby. He met people who had lost faith and silently supported them by example, and each such meeting returned him a bit of faith in his own life. One day he saw a young woman standing by the roadside crying and holding a child. Jason approached and gently asked if she needed help. She looked at him surprised at first, but then agreed, and he helped carry her bag, guided them to the nearest bus, and made sure they got on safely. The children laughed and cried at the same time, and the woman looked at him with gratitude, touching the depth of his soul. He felt that even among the chaos and filth of the city, one can leave a trace of warmth, and that trace is worth more than any material thing. He realized that even his own losses did not make him empty, for when he gives to another, he receives something far more valuable than money or positions. In the evenings, he sat on the roof of an old building and watched the thousands of lights flickering in the night darkness, and among them he saw his own little flame. He realized that even in a world where injustice rules, he could leave a mark of goodness and light, and this little hope was now his own light that would never go out. He smiled and felt peace, knowing that even in the darkest times, one can find a spark that lights the way forward. Jason understood that his path was unjust and hard, but now he was not alone. He had created a chain of little lights connecting the hearts of those who had lost hope, giving a chance to see light even in the darkest moments. He understood that the little hope living in his heart can change not the whole world, but someone's destiny, and that is enough to feel alive and needed. Jason felt his days changing, for each step was no longer only for him, but for those he met on his path. He walked through the city, noticing details. Previously unnoticed: the smile of an old woman on a bench, the smell of fresh bread from a bakery, the sound of children laughing around the corner, and each such detail was a small reminder that life is not over, that even in a world where injustice rules, one can find meaning. One evening, he met a young man who had lost his job and did not know where to go. Jason invited him for a cup of hot tea in a small cafe where he sometimes helped volunteers, and they sat like two strangers who until that moment had found understanding in words and silence. The man looked at him and said, "Thank you." And this word echoed in Jason's heart, for he realized that his small actions mattered, and that even small acts of kindness create a chain that can save someone's life. Jason climbed to the roof of an old building to look at the night city, and among the thousands of lights he saw his own little flame. He realized that, even if the world is unjust and his path was difficult, he could create something bright in the darkness, and this little hope was now his own light that would never go out. He smiled and felt that life, though difficult and unfair, is worth living, and even in the darkest nights, one can find a spark of light that illuminates the way forward. Jason felt that his days now had their own rhythm, For each step was not only for him, but for those he met on city streets. He saw the elderly walking, home alone, children getting lost in crowds and homeless sleeping under bridges, and each such meeting was a reminder that his actions matter, even if no one notices. He began to understand that life is not about great achievements or money, but about small deeds that create a spark of light for others. One day, he found a young mother sitting on a bench crying, holding her child. He approached and offered help. She looked at him, surprised, but then agreed. He helped her carry the child to the nearest bus and made sure they sat safely. At that moment, the child laughed, and Jason felt warmth filling his heart and understood that even in a world where injustice rules, he can create a little island of happiness. In the evenings, he sat on the roof of the old building and watched the thousands of lights flickering in the night darkness. And among them, he saw his own little flame. He realized that even if life is difficult and unfair, he had left a trace of warmth and light, and this little hope was his gift to the world. He smiled and felt peace, knowing that even in the darkest times, one can find a spark that leads forward. Jason understood that fate was hard and unfair, but even in this injustice, he found the strength to give and receive warmth. Small encounters helped him not to give up and gave the feeling that he was alive. He felt peace and hope, knowing that even in the darkest times, one can find a spark of light that illuminates the way forward. And though life remained hard and unfair, Jason felt that his little flame would never go out. He knew that his actions mattered, and that even in silence and loneliness, one can leave a trace of goodness and warmth. And that is enough to feel alive and needed among the thousands of city lights. His little hope shone brightly, lighting the way not only for him, but for those who had lost faith.